Bjorn Ironhand died a hero, his sword red with the blood of his enemies, expecting to feast in Odin's golden halls. But when he wakes in a silent, crumbling Valhalla, the gods are gone, and shadows whisper his name, armed with a cursed blade that hungers for his soul. Bjorn must fight through a broken afterlife to find Odin and uncover the truth behind the gods. Disappearance before the void claims him forever. Chapter 1. The Silent Halls of Valhalla. The last thing Bjorn remembered was the cold bite of steel in his chest. The axe had come down fast, swung by a snarling enemy with eyes like burning coals. Blood had sprayed across the snow, hot and red, as Bjorn's knees buckled. He'd fought hard, his sword singing through the air, cutting down foe after foe on the icy battlefield. But there were too many. His shield splintered, his strength faded, and the world turned black. He'd died a warrior's death. He was sure of it. So why did he feel so wrong? Bjorn's eyes snapped open. He wasn't on the battlefield anymore. No snow crunched under his boots. No wind howled in his ears. Instead, he lay on a cold stone floor, smooth as polished ice. The air was heavy, thick with a strange stillness that made his skin prickle. He pushed himself up, his muscles aching like he'd fought for days without rest. His leather armor was gone, replaced by a simple tunic of rough gray cloth. His sword, his trusted blade Ironfang, was nowhere to be seen. Panic clawed at his chest, but he forced it down. A Viking didn't panic. A Viking stood tall. He looked around. The hall was massive, bigger than any longhouse he'd ever seen. Towering pillars of dark stone stretched up into a ceiling lost in shadows. Golden light flickered from torches along the walls, but the flames didn't crackle or dance like normal fire. They burned steady, unnatural, casting long shadows that seemed to twist and move when he wasn't looking. The air smelled faintly of ash and iron, like a battlefield after the fighting was done. This was no ordinary place. Valhalla, Bjorn whispered, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. It had to be the Hall of the Slain, where warriors chosen by Odin feasted and fought until Ragnarok, the end of all things. He'd heard the skalds sing of it since he was a boy. Golden roofs, endless mead, and battles that never grew old. But this place felt wrong. Too quiet, too empty. Where were the other warriors? Where was the clash of swords, the laughter, the songs? He took a step forward, his bare feet slapping against the cold stone. The sound bounced off the walls, loud in the silence. "Hello," he called, his voice rough from disuse. No answer. He tried again, louder. Odin, Thor, anyone. Nothing. Just the echo of his own words, mocking him. Bjorn's hand went to his side, reaching for a sword that wasn't there. He cursed under his breath. A warrior without a weapon was like a wolf without teeth. He scanned the hall, searching for anything. Blade, a shield, even a stick. The walls were bare, except for the torches, and the floor was empty, except for a few scattered bones. Bones that didn't sit right. Valhalla was supposed to be a place of glory, not death. He crouched down, picking up a small, cracked bone. It looked human, maybe a finger or a rib. His stomach twisted. "Get a grip, Bjorn," he muttered to himself. He tossed the bone aside and stood, squaring his shoulders. He was Bjorn Ironhand, son of Gunnar, scourge of the southern seas. He'd raided villages, fought jarls, and faced storms that could swallow ships whole. Whatever this place was, he'd face it like a man. He started walking, his footsteps echoing as he moved deeper into the hall. The air grew colder, the shadows darker. The torches flickered now, just a little, as if something stirred in the distance. He kept his eyes sharp, watching for movement. Every Viking knew the gods could be tricky. Maybe this was a test. Maybe Odin was watching, waiting to see if he was worthy. The hall seemed to stretch on forever. No doors, no windows, just endless stone and shadow. After what felt like hours, He spotted something ahead a table. It was long, carved from dark wood, big enough to seat 100 men. Plates and cups were scattered across it, some tipped over, others cracked. Mead stains darkened the wood, and chunks of half-eaten bread lay moldering. Bjorn's nose wrinkled. This wasn't the feast of Valhalla. This looked like a meal abandoned in a hurry. He ran his fingers along the table's edge, feeling the rough grain of the wood. Something crunched under his foot. He looked down and saw a broken horn, the kind warriors used to drink from. He picked it up, turning it over in his hands. It was etched with runes, but they were scratched and faded, hard to read. He squinted, trying to make them out. Death, waits, shadow. The words didn't make sense, but they sent a chill down his spine. Who's there? He shouted, dropping the horn. It clattered against the stone, the sound sharp and jarring. He thought he'd heard something, a faint rustle, like cloth dragging across the floor. He spun around, fists clenched, ready to fight. But the hall was empty. Just him and the shadows. Show yourself, he roared. His voice echoed, but this time, something answered. A low, guttural sound, like a growl, came from the far end of the hall. It wasn't human. It wasn't even animal. It was wrong, deep, hollow, like the wind howling through a cave. Bjorn's heart pounded, but he stood his ground. He wasn't afraid. Not yet. The growl came again, closer now. The torches dimmed, their golden light fading to a sickly gray. The shadows on the walls stretched, twisting into shapes that looked almost human, but not quite. Long arms, sharp fingers, faces with no eyes. Bjorn backed up, his eyes darting around for something to use as a weapon. He grabbed a broken chair leg from the table, gripping it like a club. It wasn't Iron Fang, but it would do. Come on then, he growled, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his gut. Let's see what you're made of. The growl turned into a hiss, and then something moved in the darkness. It was fast, too fast, a blur of shadow and claw. Bjorn swung the chair leg, but it passed through nothing but air. The thing was gone. He spun around, searching, his breath coming in short gasps. The air was colder now, so cold it burned his lungs. The torches flickered wildly, some going out entirely. Who are you? He shouted. What is this place? A voice answered, low and rasping, like dry leaves scraping together. Valhalla is not what it seems. Bjorn froze. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, filling the hall like a fog. It wasn't Odin's voice, or Thor's. It wasn't even human. It was old, older than the mountains, and it carried a weight that made his knees want to buckle. Who's there? He demanded, gripping the chair leg tighter. Show yourself, coward. The voice laughed, a sound that made his skin crawl. Coward. You are the one who trembles, warrior. You are the one who does not belong. I died in battle, Bjorn shouted. I earned my place here. Did you? The voice hissed. Or did something else bring you here? Something darker. Bjorn's blood ran cold. He remembered the battle, the axe, the snow. He remembered dying, but there was something else, something at the edge of his memory, a shadow, a whisper, a feeling of wrongness just before the end. He shook his head, trying to clear it. I'm no coward, he said. I'll face whatever you are. The voice didn't answer. Instead, the air grew heavier, pressing down on him like a storm cloud. The shadows moved again, faster this time, circling him. He swung the chair leg, but it was useless. The shapes darted just out of reach, their forms shifting now, a wolf, now a man, now something with too many limbs. The torches were almost out now, the hall plunging into darkness. Bjorn backed up until his back hit the table. He was trapped. His heart raced, but he forced himself to stand tall. Odin, he shouted, All-Father, if you're watching, give me strength. The shadows stopped. For a moment, there was silence. Then the voice spoke again, closer now, right behind him. Odin is gone. Bjorn spun around, swinging the chair leg with all his strength. It hit nothing. The shadows were everywhere now, closing in. He could feel their cold, like frost creeping into his bones. He swung again and again, shouting curses, but the shadows didn't care. They pressed closer, their whispers filling his head with words he couldn't understand, and then, just when he thought they'd swallow him whole, a light flared. Bright, blinding. It came from the far end of the hall. The shadows hissed and scattered, retreating into the darkness. Bjorn shielded his eyes, squinting against the glare. A figure stood there, tall and cloaked, holding a staff that glowed like the sun. "Who are you?" Bjorn called, his voice hoarse. The figure didn't answer. It raised the staff, and the light grew brighter, pushing the shadows back even further. Bjorn felt warmth return to his body, the cold fading from his bones. He lowered the chair leg, his arms trembling from the effort. "Come," the figure said, its voice deep but human, not like the shadow's hiss. "You are not safe here." Bjorn hesitated. He didn't trust Isley, not after what he'd just seen, but the shadows were still out there, lurking in the corners of the hall. He had no weapon, no armor, and no idea where he was. The figure with the staff was his only hope. "Lead the way," he said gruffly. Stepping forward, the figure turned and walked into the light, and Bjorn followed, his heart still pounding. The hall seemed to shift around them, the stone walls rippling like water. He glanced back, half expecting the shadows to chase him, but they were gone. For now, as they walked, the figure spoke again. "Valhalla is broken, warrior. The gods are missing, and something else rules these halls. You were not brought here by Odin. Then who?" Bjorn asked, his voice sharp. "And why?" The figure didn't turn, but its voice grew heavy. "That is what we must discover, or all the worlds will fall." Bjorn's grip tightened on the chair leg. He didn't understand, not yet, but one thing was clear. This wasn't the Valhalla he'd been promised. This was something darker, something wrong, and he was right in the middle of it. The light grew brighter, and the hall began to fade. Bjorn kept his eyes on the figure's back, his mind racing. He was a warrior, born to fight, to conquer. Whatever this place was, whatever had brought him here, he'd face it. He'd find the truth. And if the gods were truly gone, he'd carve his own path through the darkness. Chapter 2. Shadows of the Absent Gods. Bjorn followed the cloaked figure through the blinding light, his grip tight on the splintered chair leg. The hall's stone walls had vanished, replaced by a swirling mist that glowed faintly, like moonlight, on water. The air was warm now, but it carried a strange smell like damp earth mixed with something sharp, like metal left out in the rain. His bare feet sank into soft ground, not stone, and he glanced down to see grass beneath him, pale and brittle, as if it hadn't seen the sun in years. Wherever they were, it wasn't the Valhalla he'd imagined. The figure ahead didn't slow, its staff casting a steady golden glow that cut through the mist. Bjorn squinted, trying to make out details, but the cloak hid everything: face, hands, even the shape of the body. Man or woman, he couldn't tell. All he knew was that this stranger had saved him from those shadows, and that was enough for now. Still, his instincts screamed to stay sharp. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. "Where are we going?" Bjorn called, his voice rough. The mist swallowed his words, making them sound small. The figure didn't turn. "Somewhere safe," it said, its voice deep and steady, like a river over stones. "The halls are no place for the living, or the dead." Bjorn frowned. "I'm dead. I fell in battle, an axe to the chest." He touched his tunic where the wound should have been, but his skin was smooth, no scar, no pain. "This is Valhalla, isn't it?" The figure paused, just for a moment, then kept walking. "Valhalla is not what it was. You'll see." That wasn't an answer, and Bjorn didn't like it. He quickened his pace, closing the gap between them. Speak plain. Who are you? What's wrong with this place? The figure stopped and turned, the staff's light flaring brighter. For the first time, Bjorn caught a glimpse of a face under the hood, pale skin, sharp cheekbones, and eyes that gleamed like polished steel. Not old, not young, but something timeless. My name is Ire, the figure said, and this place is a shadow of what it should be. The gods are gone, warrior. Odin, Thor, Frey, all of them. Something has taken their place. Bjorn's stomach twisted. Gone. How do gods go missing? Ire's eyes darkened. Not missing, taken, or fled. I don't know which is worse. Bjorn opened his mouth to argue, but the words died on his tongue. The skalds had sung of Odin's wisdom, Thor's hammer, Freya's beauty. Gods didn't just vanish. They were eternal, unbreakable. Yet the hall he'd woken in was empty, the air heavy with wrongness, and those shadows. He shivered, remembering their whispers, their cold. What were those things back there? He asked, tightening his grip on the chair leg. The shadows, they spoke. Ire's face hardened. They are the Varnir. Remnants of something older than the gods, older than the worlds. They should not be here, but Valhalla is weak without its masters. They slipped through the cracks. Bjorn's mind raced. He'd fought men, beasts, even storms at sea, but nothing like this. And you, what are you? Some kind of seer? Ire's lips twitched, almost a smile. Something like that. I was a guide once, for those who crossed into this realm. Now, I'm all that's left to hold the darkness at bay. Bjorn didn't like the sound of that. Hold it back. You mean fight it. Ire turned and started walking again. The staff's light cutting a path through the mist. Come, we're almost there. Bjorn followed, his jaw tight. He didn't like being led like a child, but he had no choice. The mist grew thicker, curling around his legs like smoke. The ground beneath him shifted, sometimes grass, sometimes stone, sometimes nothing at all, like he was walking on air. The light from Ire's staff kept him grounded, but just barely. He felt like he was slipping, like the world itself was unraveling. After what felt like hours, the mist parted. They stood before a massive tree, its trunk wider than a longship, its branches stretching up into a sky that wasn't there. Roots twisted across the ground, gnarled and gray, pulsing faintly like they were alive. The air here was different, but heavy with a strange power that made Bjorn's skin tingle. Yggdrasil, he breathed. The world tree, the spine of all creation. He'd heard stories, but seeing it was something else. It was beautiful and terrifying, like staring into the heart of a storm. Not quite, Ire said, her voice low. This is a shadow of Yggdrasil, a piece of it that lingers in Valhalla's ruins. It's the only place the Varnir cannot reach. Bjorn looked at her, his eyes narrowing. Ruins Valhalla's a hall, not a ruin. Ire didn't answer. She stepped forward, placing a hand on the tree's bark. The roots glowed faintly, and the mist pulled back, revealing a small clearing. In the center was a fire pit, unlit, surrounded by stones carved with runes. A pile of furs and a small wooden bench sat nearby, along with a rack holding a few weapons, a sword, an axe, a spear. Bjorn's heart leaped at the sight of them. This is my camp, Ire said. You'll be safe here, for now. Bjorn dropped the chair leg and strode to the weapon rack, his fingers itching for steel. He grabbed the sword, testing its weight. It wasn't Iron Fang, but it was solid, its blade sharp and free of rust. He swung it once, the air hissing as it cut through. Better, he said, a grim smile tugging at his lips. Ire watched him, her expression unreadable. You're eager to fight. That's good. You'll need to. Fight what? Bjorn asked, turning to face her. The Varnir. Where are they coming from? And where are the gods? Ire sat on the bench, her staff leaning against her shoulder. The light dimmed, but the clearing stayed bright, as if the tree itself glowed. I don't know where the gods are, she said. I felt them fade, one by one, like stars going out. Odin was the last. His ravens, Hugin and Munin, flew into the void and never returned. That was when the Varnir came. Bjorn's grip on the sword tightened, and no one's fighting them. Where are the other warriors? Valhalla's supposed to be full of them. Eir's eyes dropped to the fire pit. There were others. Hundreds, maybe thousands. They fought as you want to. But the Varnir are not men. They don't die like men. They take every warrior who fell to them became part of them. Their souls twisted into the darkness. Bjorn's blood ran cold. You're saying they're eating souls? Not eating, Eir said. Corrupting. Turning them into more Varnir. Valhalla is their hunting ground now. Bjorn paced, his boots crunching on the brittle grass. This wasn't what he'd signed up for. He'd died for. Glory. For a place at Odin's table. Not to be hunted by shadows in a broken afterlife. So what do? Hide here forever? Eir shook her head. Hiding won't save us. The Varnir are growing stronger. If they consume all of Valhalla, they'll spread to the other realms Asgard, all of them. We need to find out what happened to the gods. If they're alive, they can stop this. And if they're dead? Bjorn asked, his voice hard. Eir met his gaze. Then we find a way to fight without them. Bjorn snorted. Fight shadows with no gods to back us. Sounds like a bad plan. It's the only plan, Eir said. Unless you'd rather join the Varnir. He glared at her, but she didn't flinch. She was tough. He'd give her that. Fine, he said. What's the first step? Eir stood, her staff flaring to life again. We go to the Well of Ord. It lies at the roots of Yggdrasil, even in this shadow realm. The Norns, the weavers of fate, once guarded it. If any trace of the gods remains, it'll be there. Bjorn nodded, his jaw tight. And the Varnir, they'll come for us. They will, Eir said. But the tree's power keeps them at bay. For now, we move at first light. Light. Bjorn glanced up. The sky was gone, just a void of gray mist. There's no sun here. Eir's lips twitched again, that almost smile, you'll see. She turned to the fire pit, muttering words Bjorn couldn't catch. The runes on the stones glowed, and a fire sprang to life, its flames warm and real, not like the eerie torches. In the hall, Bjorn sat near it, the sword across his lap. The warmth felt good, grounding. He watched Eir as she sorted through a small pile of supplies: dried meat, a water skin, a few herbs tied in bundles. She moved with purpose, like someone who'd done this 100 times. Who were you? Bjorn asked, breaking the silence. Before all this, Eir didn't look up. I told you, a guide. That's not an answer, he said. You know my name, Bjorn Ironhand, son of Gunnar. I've earned a straight answer. She paused, her hand stilling. I was a healer, she said finally. In Midgard, long ago, I served the gods, carried their messages to the living. When I died, they brought me here to guide the slain to their place in Valhalla. That was my purpose. Now, it's this. She gestured at the clearing, the tree, the darkness beyond. Bjorn grunted. Sounds like a raw deal. Eir shrugged. It's my fate, as this is yours. He didn't like that word fate. It felt like chains, but he let it go. The fire crackled, and he leaned back, staring into the flames. His mind wandered to the battle where he died. The snow, the blood, the axe. That shadow at the edge of his memory, whispering. He pushed it away. He needed rest, not doubts. Sleep, Eir said, as if reading his thoughts. I'll keep watch. Bjorn wanted to argue, but his body was heavy, his eyes burning. He lay on the furs, the sword close to his hand. The fire's warmth lulled him, and for the first time since waking in Valhalla, he felt almost safe. But as he drifted off, He heard it again, that low, guttural growl from the hall. It was distant, barely audible, but it was there. The Varnir were watching, waiting. He clutched the sword tighter and closed his eyes, promising himself one thing. Whatever came next, he'd face it with steel in his hand and fire in his heart. Chapter 3. The broken spear of Odin. Bjorn woke with a start, his hand already on the sword. The fire in the clearing still burned, its flames low but steady, casting flickering shadows across the gnarled roots of the shadowy Yggdrasil. The air was cool, the mist thinner now, revealing a faint gray glow above, like a dawn that couldn't quite break through. Ire stood near the fire, her staff planted in the ground, her eyes scanning the darkness beyond the clearing. She looked like she hadn't moved all night. "You snore like a bear," she said without turning, her voice dry. Bjorn grunted, sitting up. His muscles ached, but the sleep had done him good. The sword felt solid in his hand, its weight comforting. "Any trouble?" he asked, nodding toward the mist. "Not yet," Ire said, "but they're out there. The Varnir don't sleep." He stood, stretching his arms. The clearing felt smaller now, the tree's massive trunk looming over them like a silent giant. The runes on the fire pit stones still glowed faintly, their light pulsing in time with the flames. Bjorn didn't know much about magic, but he could feel the power in this place. It was heavy, like a storm waiting to break. Ire handed him a strip of dried meat and a waterskin. "Eat, we have a long walk ahead." Bjorn tore into the meat, its salty temps sharp on his tongue. He washed it down with water that tasted faintly of earth. "The well of Ord," he said, wiping his mouth. "How far?" "Distances strange here," Ire said, slinging a small pack over her shoulder. "Valhalla bends time and space. It could take hours or days. The well is where the roots of Yggdrasil drink deepest, so we follow them." Bjorn glanced at the tree's roots, twisting into the mist like the limbs of some great beast. "And the Varnir, they'll follow us." Ire's eyes darkened. "They're already following. Stay close to the light." She raised her staff, and its golden glow flared, pushing back the mist. Bjorn gripped his sword and fell in step behind, her eyes darting to the shadows. The air felt heavier now, like it was watching them. He didn't hear the Varnir's growls, but he could feel them, a prickling at the back of his neck, like a wolf stalking just out of sight. They walked in silence, the only sound their footsteps and the faint hum of Ire's staff. The ground shifted under Bjorn's feet, sometimes soft earth, sometimes slick stone. The mist swirled, forming shapes that vanished when he looked to long faces, hands, eyes. He tightened his grip on the sword, his heart steady, but his senses sharp. He'd fought in battles where death came from any direction. This was no different, or so he told himself. After what felt like hours, the mist parted, revealing a narrow path lined with jagged rocks. The roots of Yggdrasil twisted along it, their bark cracked and gray, like bones left too long in the sun. The air grew colder, and the glow from Ire's staff dimmed, just a little. Bjorn didn't like that. "What's wrong?" he asked. Ire didn't answer right away. She knelt, touching one of the roots. Her fingers came away dusted with something black, like ash. "The tree is sick," she said quietly. "It's dying." Bjorn frowned. "Yggdrasil can't die. It holds the worlds together." Ire stood, wiping her hand on her cloak. "This isn't the true Yggdrasil. It's a shadow, like everything here. But even shadows can rot if the darkness grows too strong." Bjorn didn't like the sound of that, but he kept moving, his eyes scanning the rocks. Something glinted ahead, half buried in the dirt. He stopped, crouching to dig it out. It was a spearhead, its metal dull but unbroken, etched with runes that pulsed faintly. When he touched it, the shaft was gone, snapped off clean. He held it up, turning it in the light. "This isn't just any spear," he said, his voice low. "These runes, they're Odin's." Ire's eyes widened. She stepped closer, her staff's light falling on the spearhead. The runes glowed brighter, their shapes sharp and familiar, of power, of war, of the Allfather, Gungnir, she whispered. Odin's spear, or part of it. Bjorn's heart pounded. Gungnir was legend, a weapon that never missed its mark, forged by dwarves, and wielded by the god of war himself. Why is it here, broken? He asked, his voice tight. And where's the rest of it? Aya shook her head. I don't know, but this is a sign. The well is close. And if Gungnir is here, maybe Odin left something behind. Bjorn tucked the spearhead into his belt, its weight cold against his hip. It felt wrong to hold something so sacred, but it also felt right, like it belonged with him. Let's keep moving, he said, his voice gruff. If the Varnir want it, they'll have to take it from me. Aya nodded, and they pressed on. The path grew narrower, the rocks sharper, cutting at Bjorn's feet through his thin boots. The roots of Yggdrasil were thicker here, twisting over, the ground like serpents. Some were black, crumbling to ash when he stepped on them. The air grew colder still, and the mist thickened, clinging to his skin like damp cloth. Aya's staff flickered, its light struggling against the darkness. Stay close, she said, her voice sharp. The Varnir are near. Bjorn didn't need to be told. He could feel them now, their presence like a blade at his throat. The air hummed with that same guttural growl he'd heard in the hall, low and hungry. He gripped his sword tighter, his eyes darting to the shadows. They were moving again, those twisted shapes, long limbs, eyeless faces, claws that weren't quite claws. They stayed just out of reach, circling like wolves. Keep moving, Aya said, her staff raised high. The light flared, and the shadows hissed, pulling back. But they didn't leave. They lingered, their whispers filling the air with words Bjorn couldn't understand, but felt in his bones. Join us. Fall. Become. Shut up, he growled, swinging his sword at the nearest shadow. It melted away, but another took its place, closer now. He swung again, his blade cutting through nothing but air. The Varnir were toying with him, wearing him down. Aya grabbed his arm. Don't waste your strength. They want you to fight. It makes you weaker. Bjorn yanked his arm free, his blood hot. I'm not running from shadows. You will if you want to live, Aya snapped. The well is ahead. Move. He wanted to argue, but the look in her eyes stopped him. She wasn't scared, but she was serious, and that was enough. He followed her, his sword ready, the spearhead heavy at his belt. The path twisted downward, the rocks giving way to a slick, muddy slope. The roots were everywhere now, a tangled web that seemed to pulse with faint light. The air was thick, almost too thick to breathe, and the growls grew louder, closer, and then they saw it, the Well of Ord. It was a pool of dark water, its surface still as glass, nestled in a hollow of roots. The water didn't reflect the light from Aya's staff. It swallowed it, like a hole in the world. Around it stood 3 massive stones, each carved with runes that glowed faintly, their shapes twisting like living things. Bjorn felt a pull, like the well was calling him, whispering his name. This is it, Aya said, her voice low. The Norn's well. If there's a trace of the gods, it's here. Bjorn stepped closer, his eyes on the water. It was too still, too dark. He could feel it watching him, like it was alive. What now? He asked. Aya knelt by the well, her staff touching the ground. We look. The well shows truths, even in this broken place. But it's not safe. The Varnir will come. Let them, Bjorn said, his voice hard. He planted himself between the well and the path, sword raised. I'll hold them off. Aya didn't argue. She began to chant, her words soft, but strong, like a song. The runes on the stones glowed brighter, and the water in the well rippled, just once. Bjorn kept his eyes on the mist, his heart steady. The growls were louder now, the shadows closer. He could see them clearly, tall, twisted, their forms shifting between man and beast. Their whispers filled his head, louder now. Give in. Join us. Forget. Try it, he spat, raising his sword. The first Varnir lunged, a blur of claws and shadow. Bjorn swung, his blade slicing through it. It screamed, a sound that made his ears ring, and dissolved into black mist. But more came. Faster now, their claws scraping the ground. He fought like a man possessed, his sword a blur, cutting through shadow after shadow. They didn't bleed, didn't fall like men. They just kept coming. Behind him, Ayr's chant grew louder, the runes blazing. The water in the well churned, and for a moment, Bjorn saw something in it, a face, maybe, or a shape. It was gone before. He could be sure. Hurry, he shouted, slashing at another Varnir. His arms burned, his breath ragged, but he didn't stop, and then the water exploded with light. Ayr's chant cut off, and she stumbled back, her staff falling. Bjorn spun, his sword still raised. The well was glowing now, its light blinding, pushing back the shadows. The Varnir screamed, retreating into the mist. For a moment, there was silence. Bjorn lowered his sword, his chest heaving. What did you see? He asked. Ayr's face was pale, her eyes wide. Odin, she whispered. He's alive, but he's trapped, in the void. Bjorn's heart sank. Trapped? How? Ayr shook her head. I don't know, but the well showed me something else. A weapon, not Gungnir, something older. It's our only chance. Bjorn touched the spearhead at his belt. Where is it? Ayr pointed into the mist, where the roots stretched into darkness. There, the rift. But it's where the Varnir are strongest. Bjorn grinned, his blood still hot from the fight. Good, let's go hunting. Chapter 4. Whispers from the void. Bjorn's boots sank into the muddy ground as he followed Ayr deeper into the mist. The glow of her staff, barely holding back the darkness. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of rot and something sharper, like lightning after a storm. The roots of the shadow Yggdrasil twisted around them, their bark blackened and crumbling, as if the tree itself was bleeding out. The well of Ord was behind them now, its light fading, but Bjorn could still feel its pull, like a hook in his chest. The sword in his hand, and the broken spearhead of Gungnir tucked into his belt, felt like his only anchors in this strange, broken place. Ayr moved with purpose, her steps quick but careful, her staff sweeping the ground like a blind man's cane. She hadn't spoken much since the vision in the well, but her face was set, her eyes sharp with something like fear or, maybe, determination. Bjorn couldn't tell. He didn't like how quiet she'd gotten, but he kept his own mouth shut, his senses tuned to the mist. The Varnir were out there. He could feel them, their whispers slithering through his thoughts like worms. Give up. Join us. Fade. He shook his head, gripping his sword tighter. He'd rather die again than listen to that. Where's this rift? He asked, his voice low. The mist swallowed the sound, making it feel like he was shouting into a void. Ayr didn't turn. Close, she said. It's a tear in Valhalla's heart, where the worlds bleed together. The weapon sits there, but so are the Varnir. Bjorn snorted. Sounds like a trap. It might be, Ayr admitted, but it's our only lead. If Odin's trapped in the void, this weapon could free him, or kill what's holding him. Bjorn touched the spearhead at his belt, its cold metal grounding him. What kind of weapon is it? Another spear. Ayr shook her head. Older, stronger. The well didn't show me much, just a blade, black as night, burning with runes. It's not of the gods. It's something else. Bjorn didn't like the sound of that. Weapons not forged by gods or men usually came with a price. He'd heard stories of cursed blades, axes that drove their wielders mad, swords that drank blood and never stopped. But if it could stop the Varnir, he'd take the risk. Fine, he said. Let's find it. The path grew narrower, the roots thicker, twisting into arches that loomed overhead like the ribs of some great beast. The mist was darker now, almost solid. An iron staff flickered, its light struggling. Bjorn's skin prickled, his breath misting in the cold air. The whispers were louder, not just in his head, but all around, a chorus of hisses and growls. You are nothing. You will fall. Become us. He gritted his teeth, forcing the words out of his mind. Stay close, Ire said, her voice sharp. The rift is dangerous. It twists things, time, memory, even your own thoughts. Great, Bjorn muttered, stepping over a route that seemed to twitch under his foot. Anything else I should know? Ire glanced back, her eyes gleaming in the staff's light. Don't look too long at the rift. It looks back. Before he could ask what that meant, the ground shook. A low rumble, like thunder deep in the earth, made Bjorn stumble. Ire grabbed his arm, steadying him. The mist parted, and there it was, the rift, a jagged tear in the world, like a wound ripped through the air itself. It was black, deeper than night, with edges that shimmered and writhed like fire. Beyond it, Bjorn saw nothing. Not darkness, not light, just an emptiness that made his stomach lurch. The whispers were deafening now, a scream in his skull. Enter, join, become. He tore his eyes away, his heart pounding. That's the rift? He asked, his voice hoarse. Ire nodded, her face pale. The weapons inside, or beyond. I can't go with you. Bjorn stared at her. What? Why not? The rift is no place for me, she said, her voice tight. My power is tied to Yggdrasil's roots. If I cross, I'll be torn apart. You're different. You're still whole. Whole. Bjorn laughed, a harsh sound. I'm dead. Ire, I've got a sword and a broken spearhead. You think I can walk into that and come out alive? You're more than dead, Ire said, her eyes locking onto his. You're chosen. Not by Odin, maybe, but by something. The well showed you, too, in its vision. You're tied to this. Bjorn wanted to argue, to tell her she was crazy, but the weight of the spearhead at his belt stopped him. He remembered the well, the flash of a face his own, maybe, or something else. He didn't understand it, but he felt it, deep in his bones. Fine, he said, his voice hard. What do I do? Find the blade, Ire said. It's in there, somewhere. The Varnir will try to stop you. Don't listen to them, don't. Look too long at the void, and don't trust what you see. Bjorn nodded, his jaw tight. He didn't like this, not one bit, but he'd faced worse odds, or so he told himself. He stepped toward the rift, the air growing colder with every step. The whispers were a storm now, clawing at his mind. You are weak. You will break. Join us. He gripped his sword, his knuckles white, and took another step. The rift loomed, its edges pulsing like a heartbeat. He could feel it pulling at him, not just his body, but his thoughts, his memories. Flashes of his life, his village, his father's laugh. The blood on the snow flickered and faded, like they were being sucked away. He shook his head, focusing on the sword in his hand, the weight of Gungnir's spearhead. I'm Bjorn Ironhand, he growled, and I'm not yours. He stepped through. The world vanished. No ground, no sky, just endless black. His body felt weightless, like he was falling forever. The whispers were everywhere, not just words now, but screams, laughter, cries. Faces formed in the void, his father, his brothers, the men he'd killed. They twisted, their eyes turning black, their mouths stretching into unnatural grins. Join us. Become. Bjorn swung his sword, but it hit nothing. The faces laughed, melting away. He forced himself to move, though he couldn't tell if he was walking or floating. The void pressed against him, cold and heavy, like water closing over his head. Ahead, something glinted a faint light, red as blood. He focused on it, ignoring the whispers, the faces. The light grew brighter, and he saw it, a blade, black as obsidian, floating in the void. Runes burned along its edge, glowing like fire. It was beautiful and terrible, like a storm, trapped in steel. He reached for it, his fingers brushing the hilt. Pain shot through him, sharp and cold, like a blade in his chest. The whispers screamed, "You are not worthy." He gritted his teeth, pushing through the pain. His hand closed around the hilt, and the void exploded with light. He was back in the mist, the rift behind him, the black blade in his hand. It was heavy, heavier than any sword he'd ever held, and it hummed like it was alive. The runes pulsed, their light fading but not gone. Aya stood a few paces away, her staff raised, her eyes wide. "You found it," she breathed. Bjorn nodded, his chest heaving. "What is this thing?" he asked, holding up the blade. It felt wrong, like it was watching him. Aya stepped closer, her eyes on the runes. "I don't know its name, but it's old, older than the gods. It can kill the Varnir, maybe even free Odin." Before Bjorn could answer, the ground shook again. The mist churned, and the Varnir came. Dozens of them, their forms twisting wolves, men, things with too many eyes. Their screams filled the air, their claws scraping the roots. Bjorn raised the black blade, its runes flaring. "Stay behind me," he told Aya. She didn't argue. The Varnir charged, and Bjorn swung. The blade cut through them like fire, through cloth, their screams turning to ash. He fought like a man possessed, the blade singing in his hands. It was light now, like it was part of him. The Varnir fell, one by one, but more came, endless. Their whispers clawing at his mind. Aya's staff flared, its light joining the blade's fire. Together, they held the line, the Varnir falling back. But Bjorn could feel the blade's hunger, its pull. It wanted more, not just the Varnir, but him. He pushed the thought away, focusing on the fight. When the last Varnir fell, the mist was quiet again. Bjorn's arms burned, his breath ragged. Aya leaned on her staff, her face pale but steady. "You did it," she said. Bjorn looked at the blade, its runes still glowing. "This thing's dangerous," he said. "I can feel it." Aya nodded. "It is, but it's our only hope. We need to find Odin. The rift showed you something, didn't it?" Bjorn hesitated. He'd seen more than the blade flashes of a figure, chained in darkness, ravens circling. "Yeah," he said. "Odin, he's out there, and he's not alone." Aya's eyes narrowed. "Then we keep moving. The void is calling." Bjorn gripped the blade, its hum vibrating through him. The Varnir were gone, for now, but he knew they'd be back. And the blade, it was his now, whether he liked it or not. Chapter 5. Blood on the eternal plains. Bjorn's fingers tightened around the black blade's hilt, its runes pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. The air was heavy, thick with the stench of ash and something sour, like blood left to dry. The mist had thinned, revealing a vast plain stretching out before him, and Aya, its grass gray and brittle under a sky that churned with storm clouds that never broke. The roots of the shadowy Yggdrasil snaked across the ground, their bark cracked and oozing black sap. The rift was behind them now, its dark wound hidden in the fog, but Bjorn could still feel its pull, like a hand on his shoulder. Aya walked ahead, her staff casting a weak golden light that flickered in the gloom. She was quieter than before, her eyes scanning the horizon, her lips pressed tight. The vision in the well of Ord and the fight at the rift had shaken her, though she'd never admit it. Bjorn didn't push her. He had his own problems. The blade in his hand felt alive, its hum crawling up his arm like a living thing. It had cut through the Varnir like they were nothing, but it left him uneasy. Every swing felt too easy, too right, like the blade was guiding his hand. "Where now?" he asked, his voice rough. The plain seemed endless, No hills, no trees, just flat, dead ground, and the twisted roots. Ier pointed her staff toward, a faint glow in the distance, barely visible through the haze. There, she said, the eternal plains. They were once a battlefield, where Valhalla's warriors fought for glory. Now, it's something else. Bjorn squinted, trying to make out the glow. It pulsed, red and angry, like a wound in the sky. What's that light? I don't know, Ire admitted. But the well showed Odin trapped in the void, and the void touches the plains. If we're to find him, we start there. Bjorn grunted, shifting the blade to his other hand. The spearhead of Gungnir, tucked into his belt, pressed against his hip, a constant reminder of the god's absence. And the Varnir, they'll be waiting. Ire nodded, her face grim. They're drawn to the plains. The blood spilled here, calls them. Stay sharp. Bjorn didn't need the warning. He could feel the Varnir's presence, their whispers slithering through his thoughts again. You are nothing. You will fall. He shook them off, focusing on the weight of the blade, the crunch of grass under his boots. He was Bjorn Ironhand, son of Gunnar. He'd faced death before. He'd face it again. They walked for hours. Or what felt like hours. Time was slippery here, stretching and twisting like the roots underfoot. The plain was eerily quiet. No wind, no birds, just the faint hum of the black blade and the soft thud of their steps. The glow grew brighter, and Bjorn started to see shapes in the distance, broken weapons, shattered shields, bones half buried in the dirt. This was a battlefield, all right, but it felt wrong, like the fight had never ended. As they got closer, the ground changed. The grass was gone, replaced by dark, sticky earth that smelled of iron. Blood. Bjorn's stomach twisted. He'd seen battlefields soaked red, but this was different. The blood wasn't dry, was fresh, pooling in the dirt, glistening in the faint light. This isn't right, he said, his voice low. Blood doesn't stay wet like this. Ire's staff dimmed, her eyes narrowing. The plains are alive, she said, or cursed. The blood of the slain feeds something here. Bjorn tightened his grip on the blade. The Varnir, maybe, Ire said, or something worse. Before he could ask what that meant, the ground shook. A low rumble, like the growl of a beast, rolled across the plain. The blood pools rippled, and the air grew colder, heavy with the stench of decay. Bjorn raised his sword, his eyes scanning the darkness. The whispers were back, louder now, a chorus of hate. Join us, bleed, become ire, he said, his voice steady. Get ready. She planted her staff in the ground, its light flaring. Behind me, she said, but Bjorn didn't move. He wasn't hiding behind anyone, not even her. The Varnir came like a wave, their forms bursting from the blood-soaked earth-twisted shapes, half man, half beast, their eyes black voids. They moved faster than before, their claws glinting like steel. Bjorn swung the black blade, its runes blazing as it sliced through the first Varnir. It screamed, dissolving into ash, but more came, their whispers deafening. You will break, you are ours. He fought like a storm, the blade singing in his hands. It cut through the Varnir with ease, each swing sending them back to the void. But they were endless, pouring from the ground, their claws scraping his arms, his legs. Pain flared, but he ignored it, his blood hot with rage. He was a Viking, born for battle. He'd die before he let these things take him. Ire's staff glowed brighter, its light burning the Varnir where it touched. She chanted, her voice sharp and strong, and the roots around them pulsed, pushing the creatures back. But the ground kept shaking, the blood pools churning. Something bigger was coming. Bjorn could feel it, a pressure in his chest, like the air itself was turning against him. Higher, he shouted, cutting down another Varnir. What's happening? She didn't answer. Her chant grew louder, the runes on her staff flaring. The ground split open, a crack running through the plain, and something rose from a Taya figure, massive, cloaked in shadow, its eyes glowing red like the light in the distance. It wasn't a Varnir, it was worse. Its form shifted, now a warrior, now a beast, now something Bjorn couldn't name. The whispers came from it, 1,000 voices screaming at once. You are nothing. You will end. Bjorn froze, the blade heavy in his hand. The thing's eyes locked onto him, and he felt his memories. Freya's village, his father, the battle where he'd died. They slipped away, like sand through his fingers. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to focus. Ire, he roared. What is that? She stopped chanting, her face pale. A warden, she said, her voice shaking. One of the voids, keepers it guards the plains. The warden moved, its form blurring as it charged. Bjorn raised a black blade, its runes blazing. The impact was like a mountain falling. He blocked the warden's claw, but the force sent him skidding back, his boots sliding through the blood. Pain shot through his arms, but he held firm, swinging the blade again. It cut into the warden, and it screamed, a sound that made his ears bleed. Ire's staff flared, and a wave of light slammed into the warden, pushing it back. The blade, she shouted. It's the only thing that can kill it. Bjorn didn't need to be told twice. He charged, the black blade humming, with power. The warden swung again, its claws tearing through the air, but Bjorn ducked, rolling under its arm. He drove the blade into its chest, the runes burning brighter. The warden screamed, its form collapsing into shadow, then exploding into ash. The whispers stopped, the air still. Bjorn fell to his knees, his chest heaving. The blade was heavy again, its hum quieter, but still there. Blood dripped from a cut on his arm, mixing with the pools on the ground. Aya ran to him, her staff dim, but steady. You're hurt, she said, kneeling beside him. I've had worse, Bjorn grunted, pushing himself up. The cut stung, but it wasn't deep. He looked at the blade, its runes fading. This thing, it's too strong. It wants something. I nodded, her eyes on the blade. It's bound to the void. It kills what's there, but it takes a toll. Be careful with it. Bjorn didn't answer. He could feel the blade's hunger, its pull. It had saved him, but it felt like a deal with a devil. He stood, wiping the blood from his arm. The red glow in the distance was brighter now, closer. That's where we're going, isn't it? He asked. Ire nodded. The heart of the plains, where the void touches Valhalla. Odin's there, or what's left of him. Bjorn gripped the blade, its weight grounding him. The warden was gone, but the Varnir would be back, and the void, it was waiting. He could feel it, watching, whispering. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing. He'd fight until his last breath, blade or no blade. Let's move, he said, his voice hard, before more of those things show up. Ire picked up her staff, its light flaring again. They walked toward the red glow, the blood-soaked plains stretching out. Before them, the whispers were quiet now, but Bjorn knew they'd return, and when they did, he'd be ready. Chapter 6. The Forsaken Shield Maidens curse. Bjorn trudged across the blood-soaked eternal plains, the black blade heavy in his hand, its runes pulsing faintly like a dying ember. The red glow in the distance burned brighter now, a pulsing wound in the gray sky that seemed to pull at his very soul. The air was thick, heavy with the stench of iron and decay, and the ground beneath his boots was slick with fresh blood that never seemed to dry. Ire walked beside him, her staff's golden light flickering, weaker than before. The fight with the warden had taken something out of her, though she hid it well. Bjorn could see it in the tightness of her jaw, the way her eyes darted to the shadows. The whispers of the Varnir were gone for now, but the silence was worse. It pressed against Bjorn's ears, making every step, every breath, feel too loud. The roots of the shadowy Yggdrasil snaked through the ground, their blackened bark crumbling underfoot. The plain stretched on, endless, dotted with broken weapons and bones that gleamed in the dim light. Bjorn's arms stung where the warden's claw had cut him, but he ignored it. Pain was an old friend. The black blade, though, that was something new, something he didn't trust. It had killed the warden, but its hum felt like a warning, like it was waiting for him to slip. How much farther? He asked, his voice rough, cutting through the silence. Ire didn't look at him, her eyes fixed on the red glow. Not far, she said. The heart of the plains is close. The void's touch is strongest there. That's where we'll find answers. Or more trouble, Bjorn muttered, shifting the blade to his other hand. The spearhead of Gungnir, tucked into his belt, pressed against his hip, a cold reminder of the god's absence. What's this place supposed to be, anyway? A battlefield? It was, Ire said, her voice low. Valhalla's warriors fought here, proving their worth to Odin. Now it's a graveyard, cursed by the blood spilled. The void feeds on it. Bjorn's jaw tightened. He'd fought on battlefields, seen men die screaming, but this was different. The blood, the bones, the silence, it felt like the plain itself was alive, watching them. He glanced at the blade, its runes flickering. This thing, he said, lifting it slightly. It's tied to the void, isn't it? Ire nodded, her face grim. It was forged there, or born there. I don't know. It kills the Varnir, but it's dangerous. It wants something, blood, maybe, or souls. Great, Bjorn said, his voice dry. Just what I need. A sword with a mind of its own. Ire's lips twitched, almost a smile. Keep it close, but don't let it rule you. Before he could answer, a sound cut through the silence, a scream, sharp and human, echoing from the direction of the red glow. Bjorn froze, his sword raised. That wasn't Varnir, he said. Ire's staff flared, her eyes narrowing. No, that was one of us. They moved faster now, the scream pulling them toward the glow. The ground grew softer, the blood pools deeper, sucking at Bjorn's boots. The air grew colder, and the whispers returned, faint but growing louder. Join us. Break. Become. Bjorn shook them off, his focus on the scream. It came again, weaker now, a woman's voice, raw with pain. The mist parted, revealing a figure kneeling in the blood-soaked dirt. A woman, her armor battered and torn, a shield cracked at her side. Her hair was matted with blood, her face pale as bone. She clutched a broken sword, her hands trembling. Bjorn's heart lurched. She was a shield maiden, like the ones he'd fought beside in life, fierce, unyielding. But this one looked broken, her eyes wide with fear. Aya reached her first, kneeling beside her. Who are you? She asked, her voice soft but urgent. The shield maiden looked up, her eyes glassy. Sigrid, she whispered. Sigrid Ironveil. I fought, I died. But this place. Her voice broke, and she shuddered. It's wrong. Bjorn crouched beside her, his sword ready. What happened? Where are the others? Sigrid's eyes flicked to him, then to the blade in his hand. She flinched, like she'd seen a ghost. That blade, she said, her voice shaking. It's cursed. It's hers. Bjorn frowned, glancing at the black blade. Hers. Who? Sigrid didn't answer. She pointed toward the red glow, her hand trembling. She's there. The Forsaken. She cursed us. She cursed this place. Eir's face darkened. The Forsaken. Who is she? Sigrid's breath hitched. A shield maiden, like me. But older, stronger. She was here when I arrived. She said the gods betrayed us, left us to rot. She called the Varnir. Bjorn's blood ran cold. Called them. You mean she's working with those things? Sigrid nodded, tears cutting through the blood on her face. She was one of us, but the void took her. She's not human anymore. She's something else. Iris stood, her staff glowing brighter. We need to find her. If she's summoning the Varnir, she might know where Odin is. Bjorn helped Sigrid to her feet, his eyes on the glow. Can you fight? He asked her. Sigrid gripped her broken sword, her jaw tightening. I'll try. Good enough, Bjorn said. He didn't trust her, not yet, but another blade, even a broken one, was better than none. They moved toward the glow, Sigrid limping between them. The ground grew softer, the blood deeper, until it reached their ankles. The whispers were louder now, a chorus of hate. You will fall. You are hers. Bjorn's grip on the black blade tightened, its hum stronger, like it was waking up. He didn't like it, but he needed it. The glow was blinding now, a pulsing red light that seemed to come from the ground itself. The mist parted, revealing a clearing surrounded by twisted roots. In the center stood a figure, tall and cloaked in shadow, her armor gleaming black like the blade in Bjorn's hand. Her face was hidden by a helm, but her eyes burned red, matching the glow. She held a spear, its tip dripping blood that hissed when it hit the ground. The Forsaken, Sigrid whispered, her voice trembling. The figure turned, her eyes locking onto Bjorn. The whispers exploded in his head, a scream that made his vision blur. You carry her blade. You are hers. He staggered, clutching his head, but forced himself to stand tall. Who are you? He shouted, raising the black blade. The Forsaken laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You wield my sister's blade, warrior, she said, her voice sharp and cold. Do you think it will save you? Bjorn's heart pounded. Your sister, what are you? The Forsaken stepped forward, her spear glinting. I was Astrid, shield maiden of the gods. Now I am their vengeance. The gods abandoned us, left us to the void. I serve it now. Ayr's staff flared, its light pushing back the darkness. The gods are gone, she said, but Odin lives. We saw him. Where is he? Astrid's eyes narrowed. Odin. He's a prisoner, like all who defy the void. You'll join him soon. Bjorn stepped forward, the black blade humming. Not today, he said, his voice hard. Step aside, or I'll cut you down. Astrid laughed again, raising her spear. Try, warrior. That blade will betray you. Before Bjorn could move, the ground shook, and Varnir burst from the blood, their claws gleaming. Sigrid screamed, swinging her broken sword, while Ayr's staff burned bright, cutting through the shadows. Bjorn charged Astrid, the black blade blazing. Their weapons clashed, the impact sending shockwaves through his arms. The blade screamed in his hand, its runes burning, and he felt its hunger blood, souls, power. Astrid was fast, her spear a blur, but Bjorn was faster. He ducked and swung, the black blade cutting through her armor like paper. She screamed, not in pain but rage, and the Varnir surged, overwhelming Sigrid. Ayers. Light held them back, but barely. Bjorn, Ayr shouted. The blade. Use it. He didn't need to be told. He drove the blade into Astrid's chest, its runes flaring white-hot. She screamed, her form dissolving into shadow, but her voice echoed. You can't stop the void. It's in you now. The Varnir vanished, the red glow fading. Bjorn fell to his knees, the blade heavy in his hand. Sigrid was alive, barely, her armor torn. Ayr rushed to her, her staff dim but steady. She's gone, Ayr said, her voice soft, but the void's still here. Bjorn looked at the blade, its runes dark now. Astrid's words echoed in his head. It's in you now. He didn't know what she meant, but he felt it, the blade's hunger, the void's pull. He stood, his jaw tight. Where's Odin? He asked. Ayr pointed to where the glow had been. A dark archway stood there now, carved from roots, leading into blackness. There, she said, the void's heart. Bjorn nodded, gripping the blade. Then we go in. Sigrid stood, her broken sword in hand. I'm with you, she said, her voice steady, despite her wounds. Bjorn looked at her, then at Ayr. Let's end this. They stepped toward the archway, the void waiting. The blade hummed, and Bjorn felt its hunger grow. Whatever lay ahead, he'd face it. But deep down, he wondered if Astrid was right, if the void was already inside him. Chapter 7. Beneath the ashen sky, Bjorn stepped through the dark archway, the black blade humming in his hand. its runes flickering like dying stars. The air beyond was cold, sharp with the scent of ash, and something bitter, like burned bone. The ground beneath his boots was no longer the blood-soaked mud of the eternal plains, but a cracked, gray expanse that stretched into a void, under a sky heavy with ash. No stars, no moon, just a dull, churning gray that seemed to press down on him, making every breath feel stolen. Ar followed close behind, her staff's golden light, dim but steady, casting long shadows that danced across the cracked earth. Sigrid limped at his side, her broken sword clutched tight, her face pale but set with grim resolve. The archway had vanished behind them, leaving no way back. The roots of the shadowy Yggdrasil were gone, replaced by jagged stones that jutted from the ground like broken teeth. The whispers of the Varnir were faint now, but Bjorn could still feel them, slithering at the edges of his mind. "You are ours. You will fall." He shook them off, his grip tightening on the blade. Astrid's words, "It's in you now," clawed at him, but he pushed them down. He was a warrior, not a puppet. Whatever this place was, he'd face it head-on. "Where are we?" he asked, his voice low, echoing strangely in the stillness. Air's eyes scanned the horizon, her staff held high. "The ashen sky," she said. "A place between worlds, where Valhalla's edges fray into the void. Odin's here, or what's left of him." Sigrid's breath hitched. "This isn't Valhalla," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's dead." Bjorn glanced at her, noting the fear in her eyes. She was tough, but this place was wearing her down. He couldn't blame her. The air felt wrong, like it was sucking the life out of him. The black blade hummed louder, its runes pulsing in time with his heartbeat. He didn't trust it, not after Astrid, but it was all he had. The spearhead of Gungnir at his belt felt heavier too, like it was trying to tell him something. "Keep moving," Ire said, her voice sharp. "The void's heart is close. We'll find Odin there." They walked across the cracked plain, their footsteps the only sound in the oppressive silence. The ground was littered with debris, shattered armor, broken blades, skulls half buried in the ash. Some of the bones were fresh, others ancient, crumbling to dust when Bjorn's boots brushed them. He saw no blood, but the air carried its taste, metallic and sharp. The ashen sky churned above, and every now and then, a faint red glow pulsed in the distance, like the heartbeat of something massive. "What's that light?" Bjorn asked, nodding toward the glow. Ire's face tightened. "The void's heart. It's where the worlds meet, where Odin's trapped, but it's guarded." "By what?" Sigrid asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ire didn't answer. Right away, her staff flickered, and she gripped it tighter. "Something worse than the warden. Something that serves the void directly." Bjorn's jaw clenched. "Great. Another monster." He adjusted his grip on the blade, its hum vibrating through his bones. "Let it come." They pressed on, the ground growing rougher, the stones sharper. The air grew colder, and the whispers returned, louder now. "You are nothing. You will break." Bjorn ignored them, focusing on the glow ahead. It was brighter, closer, and he could feel its pull, like a tide dragging him under. The blade's hum grew stronger, almost a song, and he felt its hunger again. Blood souls, something deeper. He pushed the thought away, but it lingered, like a splinter in his mind. The plain ended abruptly at a chasm, its edges jagged and black, like a wound in the earth. Beyond it, the red glow pulsed, coming from a massive structure that loomed in the distance, a tower of twisted stone and bone, its surface writhing with runes that matched those on Bjorn's blade. The air around it shimmered, like heat rising from a fire, and the whispers were deafening now. A scream in his skull. "Enter. Break. Become." "That's it," Ire said, her voice low. "The void's heart? Odin's there." Bjorn stared at the tower, his heart pounding. "How do we get across?" The chasm was wide, too wide to jump, and the air above it shimmered with the same dark energy as the rift. Ire pointed her staff at the ground. The roots, they run beneath. We find a way down. Sigrid's face paled. Down, into that. Bjorn shot her a look. You want to stay here? She shook her head, gripping her broken sword tighter. No, I'm with you. They searched the chasm's edge, finding a narrow path that spiraled down into the darkness. The stones were slick, the air colder with every step. Ire's staff lit the way, but its light seemed to shrink, swallowed by the void. Bjorn led, his sword ready, the spearhead at his belt, a cold weight. The whispers grew louder, and now he saw shapes in the shadows' faces, hands, eyes that weren't there. His memories flickered his village, the snow, the axe that killed him. They felt distant, like someone else's life. The path ended at a cavern, its walls pulsing with the same red glow as the tower. Roots twisted through the stone, black and crumbling, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. At the center of the cavern stood a figure, cloaked in shadow, its form shifting like smoke. It wasn't a Varnir, not a warden. It was something else, something older. Its eyes were white, not red, and they burned into Bjorn like knives. You come for the Allfather, it said, its voice a hiss that echoed in the cavern. But he is ours. Bjorn raised the black blade, its runes flaring. Step aside, or I'll cut you down. The figure laughed, a sound like breaking bones. That blade is ours too. You wield it, but it serves the void. Bjorn's blood ran cold, but he didn't back down. Where's Odin? The figure pointed to the far wall, where a massive root pulsed with red light. Chains of shadow wrapped around it, and in their center was a figure tall, cloaked, one eye gleaming faintly. Odin. Bjorn's heart leapt, but the chains were thick, their links writhing like snakes. Free him, Ire said, stepping forward, her staff blazing, or we'll make you. The figure's eyes narrowed. You are nothing. The void will take you all. It moved, faster than Bjorn could follow, its form blurring into shadow. He swung the black blade, its runes burning, and felt it connect, but the figure didn't fall. It screamed, a sound that shook the cavern, and the shadows came alive. Varnir poured from the walls, their claws gleaming, their whispers a storm. You are ours. Break. Become. Bjorn fought, the blade singing in his hands. It cut through the Varnir like fire, but they kept coming, endless. Sigrid swung her broken sword, her movements slow but fierce, while Ire's staff burned, its light, pushing back the darkness. The figure the void's servant darted through the fight, its claws slashing at Bjorn. He ducked, rolled, and struck, the blade biting deep. The figure screamed again, its form flickering, but it didn't die. Bjorn shouted, cutting down another Varnir. The chains, break them. I ran to the root, her staff glowing brighter. She chanted, her words sharp and fast, and the runes on the root flared. The chains shuddered, but they held. The void's servant turned, its eyes blazing, and lunged at her. Bjorn threw himself between them, the black blade meeting its claws. The impact sent him staggering, pain shooting through his arm, but he held his ground. Sigrid, he roared. Help her. Sigrid limped to Ire's side, swinging her broken sword at the chains. They sparked, but didn't break. The Varnir pressed closer, their claws tearing at Bjorn's tunic, his skin. Blood dripped, mixing with the ash, on the ground. The black blade hummed, its hunger growing, and Bjorn felt it pulling at him, wanting more than just the Varnir's lives. Ire's chant grew louder, and the root pulsed, its light blinding. The chains cracked, just a little, and Odin's form stirred. The void's servant screamed, its form collapsing into shadow, then reforming. You cannot free him, it hissed. The void is eternal. Bjorn swung the blade, its runes blazing. It cut through the servant, and this time it didn't reform. It dissolved, its scream echoing as the Varnir fell back, their whispers fading. The cavern was quiet, the roots light dimming. Ar fell to her knees, her staff dark, her breath ragged. Bjorn ran to the root, the blade still humming. The chains were cracked but not broken. Odin's eye opened, just for a moment, and Bjorn felt its weight, like a storm trapped in a single gaze. "Warrior," Odin whispered, his voice weak but sharp, "the blade, it's not enough." Before Bjorn could ask what he meant, the cavern shook, and the red glow flared, brighter than ever. The chains tightened, and Odin's eye closed. The void's heart was fighting back. "We need to go," Ire said, standing, her voice hoarse. "Now?" Bjorn looked at Odin, then at the blade. It was humming louder, its runes pulsing. He didn't know what Odin meant, but he knew one thing: they weren't done. Not yet. Chapter 8. The Rift Beyond. The world tree. Bjorn's heart pounded as he backed away from the chained figure of Odin, the black blade in his hand humming with a hunger that set his teeth on edge. The cavern's red glow pulsed like a living thing, its light casting eerie shadows across the writhing roots of the shadowy. The air was thick, heavy with the stench of ash and blood, and the faint whispers of the Varnir lingered, though their forms had retreated into the darkness. Ire leaned on her staff, her face pale, her breath shallow from the effort of her chant. Sigrid stood close, her broken sword trembling in her grip, her eyes wide with fear, but fixed on the chained god. Odin's single eye had closed again, his form still, as if the void's chains were draining him. His words, "the blade, it's not enough," echoed in Bjorn's mind, sharp and heavy. The black blade's runes flickered, its hum growing louder, like a beast waking from sleep. Bjorn didn't trust it, not after the way it had torn through. The void's servant, not after Astrid's warning. But it was all they had. "We can't stay here," Ire said, her voice hoarse but firm. She straightened, gripping her staff. "It's light, barely a flicker now. The void's heart is too strong. We need to find the rift beyond the world tree." Bjorn's eyes narrowed. "Another rift, like the one where I got this." He lifted the blade slightly, its runes glinting. Ire nodded. "Not like the one you crossed. This one is deeper, older. It's where the void touches Yggdrasil's roots directly. If Odin's trapped, that's where the chains lead." Sigrid's voice was small, almost lost in the cavern's hum, in the Varnir. "They'll be there, won't they? Worse?" Ire said, her eyes dark. "The rift is the void's birthplace in Valhalla. Whatever guards it, it's not like the warden or Astrid. It's part of the void itself." Bjorn's jaw tightened. He touched the spearhead of Gungnir at his belt, its cold metal grounding him. "Then we move fast. Point the way." Aya raised her staff, its light flaring weakly, and pointed to a narrow tunnel at the far end of the cavern. The roots there were thick, black, and pulsing, their bark oozing a dark sap that hissed when it hit the ground. The air beyond was colder, heavier, and Bjorn felt the blade's hum grow stronger, like it knew what was coming. He didn't like it, but he led the way. Sigrid and Ire close behind. The tunnel was tight, the walls slick with sap and ash. The roots twisted around them, forming a cage that seemed to tighten with every step. Bjorn's boots slipped on the slick ground, but he kept moving, his sword ready. The whispers were back, faint but growing, slithering through his thoughts. "You are nothing. You will break." He pushed them away, focusing on the tunnel's end, where a faint red glow pulsed. Matching the rhythm of the blade's hum, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. At its center was the rift beyond the world tree, a tier in the air, larger than the one Bjorn had crossed, its edges jagged and burning with black fire. Beyond it was nothing, a void so deep it made his stomach lurch. The roots of Yggdrasil converged here, their tips dipping into the rift like they were drinking from it. The air was thick, almost solid, and the whispers were a scream now, a chorus, of hate. Enter, break, become. Bjorn stopped, his breath catching. The blade in his hand was alive, its runes blazing, its hum a roar in his ears. He felt its pull, urging him toward the rift. "This is it?" he asked, his voice rough. Ire nodded, her staff dim but steady. "The rift, the chains holding Odin lead here. If we're to free him, we need to cross." Sigrid's face was pale, her broken sword shaking. "Cross that. It'll tear us apart." Bjorn didn't argue. He could feel the rift's power, its hunger. It was like the void's heart, but worse alive, aware, watching. He glanced at the blade, its runes pulsing in time with the rift. "This thing's connected to it," he said, his voice low. "It wants to go in." Ire's eyes narrowed. "Be careful, Bjorn. The blade's tied to the void. It might be leading you." He grunted, his grip tightening. "It's not leading me anywhere. I decide where I go." Before Ire could respond, the ground shook, and the rift pulsed, its black fire flaring. A figure emerged from it, not a Varnir, or a warden, but something else, a shape of shadow and bone. Its form shifting between man and beast, its eyes twin voids that burned with white light. It was tall, taller than any man, its limbs long and twisted, its hands ending in claws that dripped black sap. The whispers came from it, 1,000 voices screaming at once. "You are ours. You will end." Bjorn raised the blade, its runes blazing. "Stay back," he told Ire and Sigrid, stepping forward. "This one's mine." The figure, the rift's guardian, laughed, a sound like shattering stone. "You wield the void's blade," it said, its voice a hiss that cut through the air. "But you are not its master." Bjorn didn't answer. He charged, the blade singing in his hands. The guardian moved, faster than thought, its claws slashing. Bjorn ducked, the blade cutting through the air, and felt it connect. The runes flaring as they tore into the guardian's form. It screamed, but didn't fall, its body reforming like smoke. The whispers grew louder, clawing at Bjorn's mind. "Give in, break, become." He swung again, the blade biting deeper, but the guardian was relentless, its claws raking his arm, his chest. Blood dripped, hot and red, and the blade's hum grew wild, its hunger pulling at him. He could feel it wanting. More, not just the guardian's life, but his own. He gritted his teeth, pushing through the pain, the whispers, the blade's pull. Ear's staff flared, its light slamming into the guardian, slowing it. Sigrid swung her broken sword, her strikes weak but fierce, drawing its attention. Bjorn used the moment, driving the blade into the guardian's chest. The runes burned white-hot, and the guardian screamed, its form collapsing into shadow, then ash. The whispers stopped, the air still. Bjorn fell to his knees, his breath ragged, blood dripping from his wounds. The blade was heavy, its hum quieter, but still there. I rushed to him, her staff dim. "You're hurt," she said, kneeling beside him. "I'll live," Bjorn grunted, standing. His arm burned, his chest ached, but he'd had worse. He looked at the rift, its black fire still burning. "We need to cross." Sigrid's eyes were wide, her face pale. "That thing, there'll be more, won't there?" Ire nodded, her face grim. "The rift is the void's heart. It won't let us through easily." Bjorn gripped the blade, its runes flickering. "Then we fight our way through. For Odin." Ire's eyes met his, and for a moment, he saw something like hope in them. "For Odin," she said. They stepped toward the rift, its pull stronger now, like a tide dragging them under. The blade hummed, its hunger growing, and Bjorn felt the void's eyes on him, watching, waiting. He didn't know what lay beyond, but he knew one thing. He'd face it with steel in his hand and fire in his heart. Chapter 9. Echoes of a shattered pantheon. Bjorn stood at the edge of the rift beyond the world tree, the black blade in his hand humming with a restless energy that crawled up his arm. Its runes pulsed faintly, their glow dim in the face of the rift's black fire, which burned without heat, its edges writhing like a living thing. The air was thick, heavy with the stench of ash and something older, like the decay of forgotten gods. Aya gripped her staff, its golden light, barely a flicker now, her face pale but resolute. Sigrid stood beside her, her broken sword clutched tight, her eyes darting to the shadows that clung to the cavern's walls. The roots of the shadowy Yggdrasil twisted around them, black and brittle, oozing sap that hissed on the cracked stone floor. The guardian's ashes still lingered in the air, a faint gray haze that stung Bjorn's eyes. Its screams echoed in his mind, mingling with the Varnir's whispers, softer now, but ever present. You are nothing. You will break. He shook them off, his grip tightening on the blade. Odin was beyond the rift, chained in the void, and Bjorn would reach him, blade or no blade. But the weight of Gungnir's spearhead at his belt, and the blade's hunger gnawed at him. It wanted something: blood, souls, maybe his own life. He didn't trust it, but he needed it. Ready? He asked, his voice rough, cutting through the silence. Aya nodded, her staff raised. The rift leads to the void's core. Odin's there, but so is whatever's holding him. Stay close, and don't let the blade control you. Sigrid's breath hitched, her knuckles white on her sword's hilt. What if we don't come back? Bjorn glanced at her, his jaw tight. Then we die fighting. Better than rotting here. She nodded, her face hardening. For Odin. For Odin, Iar echoed, her voice steady, despite the strain in her eyes. Bjorn took a deep breath, the air cold and sharp in his lungs, and stepped into the rift. The world dissolved. No ground, no sky, just endless black. His body felt weightless, like he was falling through water, but the blade's hum anchored him, its runes flaring in the void. The whisper surged, a storm of voices screaming in his head. Join us. Break. Become. Faces formed in the darkness: his father, his brothers, the men he'd killed, twisting into eyeless horrors that laughed and vanished. He gritted his teeth, focusing on the blade, its weight, its hum. Aya and Sigrid were beside him, their forms faint in the void's gloom. Aya's staff glowed weakly, a beacon in the black, while Sigrid's broken sword gleamed with a strange light, as if the void itself was sharpening it. The rift stretched on, endless, but ahead, a faint pulse of red light broke the darkness. It was the void's core, where Odin was trapped. Keep moving, Bjorn said, his voice echoing strangely, like it was coming from someone else. He pushed forward, the blade leading him, its hum growing louder, more insistent. The void pressed against him, cold and heavy, trying to pull his memories away: his village, the snow, the axe that had ended him. He held on to them, anchoring himself to the warrior he'd been. The red light grew brighter, revealing a vast chamber of shadow and bone. Massive pillars of twisted stone rose into nothingness, their surfaces carved with runes that pulsed red, matching the blade's glow. At the center was a platform, suspended in the void, where Odin hung in chains of black fire. His cloak was tattered, his single eye closed, but he was alive. Bjorn could feel it, a faint spark of divine power that made the air hum. But something else was there. Figures moved in the shadows, not Varnir or wardens, but something worse: echoes of gods, their forms broken and warped. A figure with Thor's broad shoulders but no face, wielding a hammer that dripped shadow. Another with Freya's beauty, but eyes like voids, her hands clawing at the air. They were the shattered pantheon, gods twisted by the void, their power corrupted. Air's voice was a whisper. The gods, they didn't flee, they were taken. Bjorn's heart sank. Taken by what? Before Iar could answer, the figures moved, their forms blurring as they surged forward. The Thor shadow roared, its hammer swinging, and Bjorn dove, the black blade slashing. The runes flared, cutting through the shadow, but it didn't fall. Reformed, its faceless head turning toward him. The Freya shadow screamed, her claws raking at Sigrid, who swung her broken sword. Her strikes, fierce but weak. I raised her staff, its light flaring. "Hold them off," she shouted, running toward Odin's platform. "I'll break the chains." Bjorn fought, the black blade a blur in his hands. It cut through the shadows, but they kept coming, their forms shifting, now Thor, now Freya, now others he didn't know. The whispers were deafening, screaming in his skull. "You are theirs. You will break." The blade's hum was a roar now, its hunger pulling at him, wanting their power, their essence. He felt it trying to take him, too, but he fought it, his will like iron. Sigrid screamed as the Freya shadow's claws tore her arm, blood spraying. Bjorn roared, slashing through the shadow, its form dissolving into ash. "Stay with me," he shouted, grabbing Sigrid's arm, pulling her back. She nodded, her face pale, but she raised her sword again, blood dripping from her wound. Aya reached the platform, her staff blazing as she chanted. The chains of black fire shuddered, their links cracking, but the shadows surged, their attacks relentless. Bjorn fought like a storm, the blade cutting through them, but they were endless, their power growing. The Thor shadow swung its hammer, and Bjorn barely dodged, the impact shaking the platform. He struck back, the blade biting deep, but the shadow laughed, its voice a hollow echo of Thor's ire. Bjorn shouted, his voice raw, "Hurry." Her chant grew louder, the runes on the platform flaring. Odin's eye opened, just for a moment, and Bjorn felt its weight, like a mountain, pressing down. "Warrior," Odin whispered, his voice faint, but sharp. "The blade, it's their key." Bjorn didn't understand, but there was no time to ask. The shadows pressed closer, their claws tearing at his tunic, his skin, blood dripped, and the blade's hum grew wild, its runes burning white-hot. It wanted the shadows, wanted him. He gritted his teeth, fighting its pull, fighting the shadows, fighting the void itself. Ire's chant peaked, and the chains shattered, black fire exploding outward. Odin fell, his form crumpling to the platform, but the shadows screamed, their forms collapsing into ash. The whispers stopped, the air still. Bjorn staggered, the blade heavy in his hand, its hum quieter now, but still there. Aya ran to Odin, her staff dark, her face drained. "Allfather," she said, kneeling beside him, "we're here." Odin's eye opened, gleaming faintly. "You've done well," he said, his voice weak but heavy with power. "But the void is not done. The blade, it's their anchor." Bjorn looked at the blade, its runes dark now. "Anchor, what does that mean?" Odin's eye closed, his breath shallow. "The void made it. It binds you to them. To free me, you must destroy it." Bjorn's heart sank. The blade had saved him, killed the Varnir, the warden, the shadows, but it was part of the void, part of the enemy. He gripped it tighter, its hum stirring again. "And then what?" he asked. Odin didn't answer. His form flickered, like he was fading. Ire's face paled. "He's slipping," she said, "the void's pulling him back." Bjorn looked at the blade, then at Odin. The shadows were gone, but the rift was still there, its black fire burning. He didn't know how to destroy the blade, or if he could. But he knew one thing. He wasn't done fighting. "We need to move," he said, his voice hard. "Find a way to end this." Ire nodded, helping Odin stand. Sigrid limped closer, her arm bleeding, but her eyes fierce. The rift pulsed, its fire flaring, and Bjorn felt the void's eyes on him, waiting. The blade hummed, and he wondered if Odin was right, if it was his chain too. Chapter 10. The Warriors Unseen. Bjorn's hand trembled as he gripped the black blade, its runes flickering like a dying fire in the dim light of the void's core. The air was heavy, thick with the stench of ash and blood, and the shattered platform beneath his feet pulsed with the faint red glow of the rift. Odin leaned heavily on Ire, his tattered cloak dragging across the bone-strewn ground, his single eye half open, but gleaming with a faint, unyielding power. Sigrid stood close, her broken sword clutched in her bloodied hand, her face pale but fierce despite the wound on her arm. The shadows of the broken gods were gone, their ashes scattered, but the rift's black fire still burned, its edges writhing like a living wound. The whispers were quiet now, but Bjorn could feel them lurking, waiting to strike. Odin's words echoed in his head. The blade, it's their anchor. The black blade hummed, asterisk, 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 its hunger a constant pull at the edge of Bjorn's mind. He didn't understand what Odin meant. How could a blade be an anchor for the void? But he felt its truth in his bones. The blade was alive, its runes pulsing in time with the rift, like it was part of this place, part of the enemy. He'd fought with it, killed with it, but now he wondered if it was using him as much as he was using it. "We need to get him out of here," Bjorn said, his voice rough, nodding toward Odin. The Allfather was weak, his form flickering like a candle in the wind, as if the void was still trying to pull him back. Ire nodded, her staff dark but held tight in her hands. "The rift is the key. If we can close it, we might break the void's hold on him." Sigrid's eyes widened, her voice sharp. "Close it, that thing." She pointed her broken sword at the rift, its black fire flaring brighter, as if it heard her. Bjorn's jaw tightened. "How do we close it?" Ire's face was grim, her eyes fixed on the rift. "The blade." Odin said, "It's the anchor. Destroy it, and the rift might collapse." Bjorn looked at the blade, its runes pulsing faintly. Destroy it. It had saved them, cut through Varnir and wardens like they were nothing. But Odin's warning rang true. It felt wrong, like it was watching him, waiting for something. He touched the spearhead of Gungnir at his belt, its cold metal a reminder of the god's power, now faded. "And if it doesn't work?" he asked. Ire met his gaze, her eyes hard. "Then the void takes us all," Bjorn grunted, shifting the blade's weight. "No pressure." Then the platform shook, a low rumble, rising from the rift. The air grew colder, heavier, and the whispers returned, soft but sharp, like knives in the dark. "You are ours. You will break." Bjorn shook them off, his focus on Odin. The Allfather's breathing was shallow, his eye fluttering, but he was still here, still fighting. Bjorn wouldn't let him fall. "Which way?" he asked, scanning the chamber. The pillars of twisted stone loomed around them, their runes pulsing red, matching the blade's glow. The air was thick, pressing down like a storm about to break. Ire pointed her staff at a narrow path leading from the platform, where the roots of the shadowy Drasil twisted into the darkness. "There. The rift's source is deep in the void. If we destroy the blade there, it might end this." Sigrid limped forward, her sword ready, despite her wounds. "Let's move." "I don't want to stay here." Bjorn led the way, supporting Odin's weight on his shoulder. The Allfather was heavy, his presence like a mountain, even weakened. The path was slick, the roots black and crumbling, oozing sap that burned when it touched Bjorn's boots. The blade's hum grew louder, its runes flaring, as if it knew where they were going. Bjorn's arm ached from its weight, and his wounds from the last fight stung. Blood still seeped from the cuts on his chest and arm, mixing with the ash on the ground. The path twisted downward, the air growing colder, the whispers louder. "You cannot win. You are nothing." Shapes moved in the shadows, faint, flickering forms that weren't Varnir or gods, but something else, something unseen. Bjorn's skin prickled, his heart pounding. The blade's hum was a roar now, pulling at him, urging him to swing, to fight. He resisted, focusing on Odin, on the path, on keeping his mind clear. The path ended at a vast pit, its edges jagged, its center a swirling vortex of black fire, the rift's source. It was smaller than the rift above, but deeper, its darkness endless, like a mouth waiting to swallow them. The roots converged here, dipping into the vortex, their sap dripping like blood. The whispers were deafening, a scream in Bjorn's skull. Give in, break, become dot, and then he saw it, the unseen foe. It wasn't a figure, not a beast or a god, but a presence, a shadow that filled the pit, its form shifting, never solid. Its eyes were everywhere and nowhere, countless voids watching, waiting. The blade's runes blazed, its hum, a song of hunger, and Bjorn felt it pull at him, hard, like it wanted to leap from his hand into the vortex. What is that? Sigrid whispered, her voice shaking. Yor's face was pale, her staff dark. The void itself, she said. Not a creature, not a god. The source of the Varnir, the wardens, all of it. It's what's holding Odin. Bjorn's heart sank. How do we fight something like that? We don't, Ire said. We destroy. The blade. It's the anchor, the link. Break it, and the void loses its hold. Bjorn looked at the blade, its runes burning. It had saved him, killed his enemies, but now he saw it for what it was, chain, binding him to the void. He stepped toward the vortex, the blade's hum shaking his bones. The unseen foe moved, its presence pressing against him, its whispers a storm. You are mine. You will fall. He raised the blade, its weight heavier than ever. Bjorn, Ire shouted. Do it now. He hesitated, the blade's hunger clawing at him. Memories flickered his village, his father's laugh, the snow where he'd died. They were slipping, fading, like the void was stealing them. He gritted his teeth, his will like iron. I'm not yours, he growled. He swung the blade, not at the foe, but at the vortex itself, driving it into the black fire. The runes exploded with light, white-hot, and the blade screamed, a sound, like 1,000 voices. The vortex flared, its fire surging, and the unseen foe roared, its presence slamming into Bjorn. He staggered, pain shooting through him, but he held the blade, pushing it deeper. The roots shook, crumbling, and the pit began to collapse. The black fire dimming, Ire's staff flared, its light joining the blades. Sigrid swung her broken sword, cutting at the roots, her blood mixing with the sap. The unseen foe screamed, its presence fracturing, its eyes fading. The whispers stopped, the air still. The blade shattered, its pieces dissolving into the vortex, and the pit closed. The black fire gone. Bjorn fell to his knees, his chest heaving. Odin stirred, his eye opening, brighter now. You've done it, he said, his voice weak but strong, with power. The anchor is broken. Ire helped Odin stand, her face drained but hopeful. Sigrid leaned on her sword, blood dripping from her arm. The chamber was quiet, the roots still, their sap no longer hissing. The void's presence was gone, but Bjorn felt its echo, like a shadow in his heart. Is it over? He asked, his voice rough. Odin's eye met his, heavy with knowledge. Not yet. The void is weakened, but it's not gone. You've freed me, but Valhalla is still broken. Bjorn stood, his body aching. The blade was gone, but Gungder's spearhead remained, cold at his belt. What now? He asked. Odin's voice was sharp, like a blade. We rebuild, or we fight until the end. Bjorn nodded, his jaw tight. The void was still out there, waiting. But he was a warrior, and warriors didn't stop. Chapter 11. Betrayal. In the realm of glory, Bjorn's hands felt empty without the black blade, its absence like a missing limb. The air in the chamber was still, heavy with the lingering stench of ash and sap, though the void's oppressive weight had lifted. The pit where the rift's source had been was gone, sealed shut, leaving only cracked stone and the brittle roots of the shadow-rigged razel. Odin stood taller now, his tattered cloak hanging from broad shoulders, his single eye gleaming, with a faint but growing fire. Higher leaned on her staff, its light dim but steady, her face etched with exhaustion. Sigrid gripped her broken sword, blood still seeping from her arm, her eyes darting to the shadows as if expecting the Varnir to return. The whispers were gone, the void's presence faded, but Bjorn's skin still prickled. The spearhead of Gung at his belt felt heavier, its cold metal a reminder of the god's fractured power. Odin's words, "The void is weakened, but not gone," hung in the air like a storm cloud. Bjorn didn't trust the quiet. He'd fought too many battles to believe. "It was over. Where now?" he asked, his voice rough, echoing in the silent chamber. Odin's eye fixed on him, sharp and heavy, like a blade pressed to his throat. "Back to Valhalla's heart," he said, his voice low but strong. "The halls where I once ruled. If we are to rebuild, it starts there." Ayr's brow furrowed. "The halls are overrun. The Varnir still lurk, and the void's taint is deep. Can we hold it?" Odin's lips twitched, almost a smile. "With me, you can, but beware. The void leaves scars, and not all who walk these halls are what they seem." Bjorn's jaw tightened. "You're saying there's a traitor?" Odin's eye darkened. "I say trust no one but your own steel." Bjorn glanced at Ayr, then Sigrid. Ayr's face was unreadable, her staff gripped tight. Sigrid's eyes were wide, her knuckles white on her sword's hilt. He didn't want to doubt them, but Odin's warning sank into him like a blade. He'd fought beside them, bled with them, but this place twisted everything, even trust. "Let's move," he said, his voice hard. He took the lead, his hand itching for a weapon. The spearhead at his belt wasn't enough, but it would have to do. Odin walked beside him, his steps slow but steady, his presence like a storm held in check. Ayr and Sigrid followed, the faint glow of Ayr's staff lighting the way. The chamber's walls shifted as they walked, stone melting into the familiar dark pillars of Valhalla's great hall. But it was different, now cracked, crumbling, the torches along the walls flickering with sickly gray light. The long tables were overturned, their wood splintered, cups and plates scattered like bones. The air was cold, heavy with the stench of rot, and the silence was broken only by their footsteps and the faint drip of something wet in the distance. "This isn't the Valhalla I was promised," Sigrid muttered, her voice shaking. "It's not," Odin said, his eyes scanning the hall. "But it's what we have. We reclaim it, or we lose everything." Bjorn's boots crunched on broken glass as he stepped over a shattered horn. The spearhead at his belt felt heavier, almost pulling him toward the far end of the hall, where a massive throne of dark stone stood, its surface carved with runes that pulsed faintly red. "That's yours, isn't it?" he asked Odin. The Allfather nodded, his face grim. "Once. Now it's a trap." Before Bjorn could ask what he meant, a figure stepped from the shadows behind the throne, tall, cloaked in tattered furs, with a face half hidden by a hood. It was a man, or had been. His skin was pale, his eyes black voids, like the Varnir, but human. He held a spear, its tip gleaming with the same black sap that oozed from the roots. His smile was sharp, cruel, and Bjorn's blood ran cold. "Welcome back, Allfather," the figure said, his voice smooth but laced with venom. "You've brought friends." Odin's eye narrowed. "Loki." Bjorn froze. Loki, the trickster god. The Skalds had sung of him cunning, treacherous, the one who'd bring Ragnarok. But here he was, in Valhalla's heart, his eyes empty, his presence wrong. "Loki," Ayr said, her staff flaring. "You're with the void." Loki laughed, a sound like breaking ice. "With it? I am it, in a way. The gods fell ire, I adapted. The void offered power, and I took it." Bjorn's hand went to the spearhead, his heart pounding. "You betrayed the gods." Loki's smile widened. "Betrayed? They abandoned us, warrior. Odin, Thor, Freya, they left us to rot. The void is the future. Join it, or be consumed." Sigrid stepped forward, her broken sword raised. "You're a coward," she spat. "You sold us out." Loki's eyes flicked to her. his smile fading. Careful, shield maiden. The void doesn't care for heroes. Bjorn moved before Loki could act, pulling the spearhead from his belt. It wasn't a weapon, not really, but it was Odin's, and it felt right in his hand. Step aside, he growled, or I'll make you. Loki laughed again, raising his spear. With that, you're brave, Bjorn Ironhand, but foolish. The hall shook, and Varnir poured from the shadows, their claws gleaming, their whispers a storm. Join us, break. Become? Bjorn charged, the spearhead clutched like a dagger, its runes flaring as he struck. Loki was fast, his spear a blur, but Bjorn was faster, dodging and slashing. The spearhead bit into Loki's arm, drawing black blood that hissed on the stone. Eir's staff flared, its light burning the Varnir, while Sigrid swung her broken sword, her strikes fierce despite her wounds. Odin stood still, his eye blazing, and raised a hand. The air crackled, and a wave of power slammed into the Varnir, scattering them like leaves. But Loki was untouched, his smile sharp as he parried Bjorn's next strike. You can't win, Loki said, his voice low. The void is eternal. Even Odin knows it. Bjorn didn't answer. He fought, the spearhead cutting through Loki's defenses, its runes glowing brighter with every strike. Loki's form flickered, like he was part shadow, but Bjorn pressed on, his blood hot with rage. He'd lost too much to this place's life, his glory, his trust in the gods. He wouldn't lose this fight. Eir's chant rose, her staff blazing, and the throne's runes flared, pushing back the Varnir. Odin stepped forward, his voice a low growl. Loki, you've fallen too far. Loki's eyes burned. And you're too weak to stop me. Bjorn saw his chance. He lunged, driving the spearhead into Loki's chest. The runes exploded with light, and Loki screamed, his form dissolving into shadow, then ash. The Varnir scattered, their whispers fading. The hall was quiet, the throne's runes dimming. Bjorn fell to his knees, the spearhead heavy in his hand. Blood dripped from a cut on his cheek, mixing with the ash on the floor. I rushed to him, her staff dark, her face pale. You did it, she said, her voice soft. Odin approached the throne, his eye gleaming. Not yet, he said. Loki was a pawn, the void still lingers. Bjorn stood, his body aching. What now? Odin's gaze was heavy. We take back Valhalla, but the void's heart is deep. Loki was only the beginning. Sigrid limped closer, her sword shaking. He betrayed us. Are there others? Odin's eye darkened. Always. Bjorn gripped the spearhead, its runes faint now. The hall was theirs, for now, but the void was still out there, watching. And somewhere, deep in his gut, he felt that Loki's betrayal wasn't the last. Chapter 12. The hunger of the cosmic dark. Bjorn stood in the shattered heart of Valhalla. His breath ragged, the spearhead of Gungnir clutched tight in his hand. Its runes pulsed faintly, their glow dim against the flickering gray light of the hall's torches. The throne of dark stone loomed behind him, its runes silent now, but the air was heavy, thick with the stench of ash and blood. Odin sat upon the throne, his tattered cloak pooling around him, his single eye burning with a fire that was both weary and fierce. Eir leaned on her staff, its light barely a spark, her face pale from the strain of the fight with Loki. Sigrid stood nearby, her broken sword dripping with black sap, her arm bandaged with a strip of cloth torn from her tunic, her eyes sharp despite the pain. The hall was quiet, too quiet. Loki's ashes had scattered, the Varnir gone, but Bjorn felt no victory. The void's presence lingered, a cold weight in his chest, like a shadow that wouldn't leave. Loki's betrayal had cut deep not just his treachery, but the truth. He'd spat. The gods had fallen, abandoned them. Odin was here, but weakened, his power a flicker of what it should be. The spearhead in Bjorn's hand felt like their only hope, but it was just a piece, broken like everything else in this place. We've got the hall. Bjorn said, his voice rough, breaking the silence. What's next? Odin's eye fixed on him, heavy with knowledge. The void is not done, he said, his voice low but sharp, like a blade drawn across stone. Loki was its voice, but not its heart. The cosmic dark hungers still, and it will not stop until Valhalla is consumed. Eir's staff trembled in her hand. The cosmic dark. You mean the void itself? Odin nodded, his face grim. The void is no mere shadow. It is a hunger, older than the worlds, older than me. It feeds on life, on power, on hope. It took my Kinthor, Freya, the others, and it will take us unless we strike first. Bjorn's jaw tightened. Strike where? The rift's gone. Loki's dead. What's left? Odin's eye flickered to the spearhead in Bjorn's hand. Gungnir. Its pieces are scattered, but they hold my power. Find them, reforge the spear, and we can pierce the void's heart. Sigurd's voice was small, almost lost in the hall's echo. Reforge it. Where are the pieces? Odin leaned forward, his cloak rustling. The void hides them, in its deepest places. The hunger guards them. You must face it. Bjorn's stomach twisted. The hunger, another monster. Odin's smile was thin, sharp. Not a monster. The void's will, given form. It is what twisted Loki, what broke my kin. It waits in the dark, where Valhalla's roots rot. I stepped forward, her staff flaring weakly. The roots. You mean Yggdrasil's shadow. We've been there. It's dead, crumbling. Not dead, Odin said, wounded. The hunger feeds on it, but the roots still hold power. Find the pieces of Gungnir there, and you can end this. Bjorn gripped the spearhead, its runes warm against his palm. Point the way, Allfather. Odin raised a hand, and the hall shimmered, its walls melting into a dark tunnel lined with twisted roots. The air grew colder, thick with the stench of rot and something sharper, like lightning trapped in stone. The roots pulsed faintly, their sap black and hissing, and the faint hum of the void returned, a low growl that set Bjorn's teeth on edge. Follow the roots, Odin said, standing, his voice stronger now. I cannot go with you. The throne holds me, keeps the void at bay, but I will guide you as I can. Bjorn nodded, his heart heavy. He didn't like leaving Odin, not after fighting so hard to free him, but there was no choice. He glanced at Eir and Sigrid. Ready. Eir's face was set, her staff raised. For Valhalla. Sigrid gripped her broken sword, her eyes fierce. For the gods. They stepped into the tunnel, the hall fading behind them. The roots closed in, their bark cracked and oozing, the air growing colder with every step. Bjorn led, the spearhead in one hand, his other hand empty, but ready. The loss of the black blade stung, but he felt freer without its hunger pulling at him. The spearhead was different. It was Odin's, pure, unbroken by the void. The tunnel twisted downward, the roots thicker now, their sap pooling on the ground. The hum grew louder, and the whispers returned, soft but sharp. You are nothing. You will feed us. Bjorn shook them off, his focus on the path. Shapes moved in the shadows, faint flickering. Not Varnir, but something else. Something that watched without eyes. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern, its ceiling a tangle of roots that pulsed with faint red light. At its center was a pool of black sap, its surface rippling like water, and above it floated 3 shards of metal, gleaming with runes, pieces of Gungnir's shaft. But something else was there, a presence that filled the cavern, not a figure, but a force, a hunger that pressed against Bjorn's chest, stealing his breath. The hunger, Eir whispered, her staff flaring. It's here. The pool churned, and the hunger took form, a shifting mass of shadow and sap, its shape never solid. Now a beast, now a man, now a storm of claws and eyes. Its presence was a scream, the whispers exploding in Bjorn's mind. Feed us, break, become. He staggered, clutching the spearhead, its runes flaring to push back the darkness. "Get the shards," he shouted, charging the hunger. The spearhead wasn't a weapon, not yet, but he swung it like a dagger, its runes burning as it struck. The hunger screamed, its form splitting, then reforming, its claws slashing. Bjorn dodged, the sap burning, his skin where it touched, but he struck again, the runes flaring brighter. Ire ran to the pool, her staff glowing, chanting words that made the roots pulse. Sigrid swung her broken sword, cutting at the hunger's tendrils, her blood mixing with the sap. The hunger surged, its claws raking Ire's back, and she cried out, her staff falling. Bjorn roared, driving the spearhead into the hunger's core. It screamed, its form fracturing, but it didn't die, it split, becoming two, then three, each shadow lunging. "Ire!" Bjorn shouted, slashing at the shadows, the shards. She scrambled to her feet, blood dripping, and reached for the floating shards. Her chant grew louder, the roots flaring, and one shard fell into her hand, its runes blazing. The hunger screamed, its forms merging again, and lunged at her. Bjorn threw himself between them, the spearhead cutting deep. The hunger recoiled, its whispers a storm. "You will feed us. You are ours." Sigrid grabbed another shard, her sword slashing to keep the shadows back. Ire's chant peaked, and the third shard fell, the pool of sap boiling. The hunger roared, its form collapsing into the pool, but the cavern shook, roots cracking, sap spraying. Bjorn grabbed Ire, pulling her back as the pool erupted, black fire surging upward. "Run," he shouted, dragging Ire and Sigrid toward the tunnel. The roots crumbled, the cavern collapsing, but the shards were theirs, their runes glowing in Ire's hands. The hunger's scream followed them, its presence fading but not gone. They stumbled into the tunnel, the cavern's collapsed ceiling. It behind them. Bjorn's chest heaved, his skin burned from the sap, but the spearhead and shards were safe. Ire clutched them, her face pale, blood staining her cloak. Sigrid leaned against the wall, her arm bleeding, but her eyes were fierce. "We got them," Ire said, her voice weak but steady. "Gungnir's pieces." Bjorn nodded, the spearhead warm in his hand. "Back to Odin, we reforge it, and we end this." The tunnel hummed, the void's presence lingering. The hunger was weakened, but it wasn't dead. Bjorn felt it watching, waiting. He gripped the spearhead, its runes a promise. The void wanted a fight. He'd give it one.